Hello and welcome to another Demon 212 Xbox One review. Today I'm going to be taking a look at Dead Rising 3, which if you've never played it before, it's the game that Dead Rising 2 should have been. It's like, I suppose the only way to classify the genre is an action, adventure, survival horror. And it's just one of those, there is so much to cover with this, so I'll try to get it all done in quicker fashion than I usually do. At the start you've got story mode, nightmare mode, untold stories, online, downloadable content, options and help, which I've had to disable Kinect because otherwise every single one of those would have just tried to open as I said it. You can disable Kinect in most ways. It seems that very few things can be disabled, and it's not that I dislike the feature with the Kinect in this game. It actually can be quite helpful at times. It's the fact that the slightest thing sets it off. And it's just insane when there's a section where you've got like shout hey zombies. It tells you at the start if you shout the zombies will come to you. The dog that you hear from a next door neighbour that you'll have heard if you saw the Peggle 2 review, that sets it off. It's insane. So the amount of times, I mean, if you're trying to be stealthy and you've constantly got them coming towards you, you know. So it's not that I dislike Kinect on this game. It's that for me, it's buggy. Options wise, you have got a plethora to go for. There's nothing really unique or anything like that, and you can't customize your controls or anything like that. You can just basically view them and things, but it's not exactly a bad control setup. I didn't have a problem with it once, and it plays just like the other Dead Rising games, only more like 2, because 1 was archaic. 1 did things that shouldn't have been done with a controller. Like aiming wasn't the triggers, whereas in 2 it was, and then in this it is. Nightmare mode is basically story mode, only much harder. You get less time to do the game, and you can only save in the standard style of Dead Rising pretty much, whereas now you can kind of save anywhere and everywhere. It's rare that it allows you to save, that it doesn't allow you to save. Untold Stories is the season pass, which basically each episode is very short. That's pretty much the only way I can really describe them. They don't have a lot of personality. You're going around the same city that you've gone around before, doing similar missions in some cases. I mean, it's either like a collectathon or saving people. There's like in the first 2 there aren't any bosses at all, and it took for the 3rd one before they finally added boss fights to it, and that was simply that you go around and fight other gang leaders because you play as one of the gang bangers who you actually come up against at the start of the game. And it's just one of those. It's a bit of a shame that it's quite disappointing, but at the same time I can't say it's so disappointing to the point that I'm glad that I didn't want to buy it, because it adds, each one of them adds 5 weapons and then a new combo weapon and then a new vehicle. And all that stuff is great for playing the main game, and a lot of it I ended up using. And to be fair, the actual weapons I for the most part didn't really get them or anything, because you go to specific lockers and that in safe zones, and it got to the point that I've rarely found myself going to the safe zones, so I didn't pull out the weapons. But there's things like almost like a Magnum with an 8-cylinder, and it fires out incendiary shells, and there's a rail gun, and there's a grenade launcher that looks like it fires. It has like the same effect as if it was firing queen bees, and I don't know if it does. But when you fire it, all of a sudden just a load of zombies die around it, and it's not really from an explosion or anything. So they are good from what I played of them, but I very rarely actually got them. I do think it handles DLC abilities though in a decent way, because while you do get a lot of them from one point of view, you don't get a lot of them from the other, because it's not a case of like they're infinite or anything, but at the same time they are. And the only way I can really describe it is when you put it on, there's sections at the very bottom of the weapon, and they're lighting up in blue as you're playing, and basically they're timed rewards. So the longer you play, the more of them you stockpile until you reach the maximum, which is usually something like 4. So it's not even a case of you can have like 150, you know. And as soon as you take one out, it reduces a full bar and then you've got to wait for it to charge up again, and some of them you can only have 2, some of them that are things that are just so overpowered that you can only have 2 of them, and it's just one of those that it does a good job of balancing how you've got them, and it's as much as the weapons themselves and the vehicles and that are good, while I found myself using the vehicles, it was only really out of necessity of survivors, because the amount of times you're walking around with a load of survivors and they just don't fit on motorbikes and that, you know, and if you drive too far away from them, then they automatically go back to a safe zone, and surviving, the whole survivor method works completely different on this. I mean, you're probably saying, now I've just saved someone there, now they're going to go off on their own, I can't do anything about that, they don't come with me, they're not classed as a real rescue or anything. It's not a case of like where on the first couple of games you had to save 50 survivors or something to get the S rank. It's just one of those that you'll get survivors like that, and then you'll get other survivors, and then they will go into the database, but at the same time, whenever I went to a safe zone or anything where it said that these have returned to a safe zone, they weren't there. So it's not like you can then do follow-up stories. At no point did it tell me, hey, go back to the safe zone, someone wants to speak to you. Whereas in Dead Rising 2 there was a lot of that, and there was even some mini games like playing poker, you know. So they've done a lot to the game, and I think a lot of it is for the better. How they handle the respawning of any sort of vehicle, because you can collect them anywhere, and it's just great to automatically have an arsenal of vehicles so that you're not going around having to struggle. And why is that important, you might be asking, if you've played the first 2 and not had the chance to play this one. Maybe like myself, at the time for about 6 months I didn't have an Xbox One, I've only just got it and I'm over the moon with how the game plays. Well, if you're in that situation, I'm not going to say it's worth buying a console for this game, but I'm going to say this was one of my main reasons, and I've not been disappointed. There was a lot of crap being said, basically people, and I said in an earlier vid that mightn't be up anymore by the time you're watching this, simply because it's like a preview type vid whenever I get a new console, and I don't leave them up for the whole length of the channel, you know, because there's not really much point, especially in this day and age when firmware updates drastically change consoles, and things that I might have complained about might not exist anymore, you know. But in that vid, I simply said there's a lot, it's a hard time whenever you buy a console as to telling what's real and what's complete and utter fanboy bullshit. And all I heard about this game was, it's a 360 game, it could have been done on 360, I mean it's in 720p, you can tell the graphics are terrible, it's just like the 360 version, the loading is horrific, and just thing after thing after thing. So I was terrified about getting the game, and then I got it. Graphically, it is significantly better than the Xbox 360 versions. Loading times are awful, all 2 of them. You are in a full city for the first time. You don't go from mall to mall to mall, everywhere is one location. The only time the game actually loads when it's not a loading screen is when it's doing a cutscene while you're watching it for the story, which even then, now that I'm replaying the game, every time I've skipped a cutscene, it's let me skip straight away and the loading's been about 2 seconds, 3 seconds long. The only real loading screens are when you first boot the game up and when you first go to exit the game. Well, to be fair, I say first go to exit, and when you're actually exiting the game. So as in, the game's loaded, you hit start, you hit quit. They're the only times you actually suffer from long loading times. That's it, those 2 things. Everything else is just so amazing, it's unbelievable. The whole game just plays as if they've basically listened to everything the fans wanted. So we've finally got an open world city, we don't have to go through from mall to mall to mall. We finally got the ability to craft anywhere. You no longer have to go to crafting areas. You can just, I mean, if you pick something up and it's combinable, you can do it there and then, because Nick's a mechanic, and it's why I actually think Nick is probably the best character they've ever created for Dead Rising. I love Frank West, I love Chuck Green, I really liked the both of them when I was playing. I wasn't one of those people who immediately said, oh, I hate Chuck because he's not Frank. I liked how both characters handled, I liked the progression to it, essentially, because it made sense for Frank to take pictures. He was a journalist, and then they got rid of that, and instead they made a guy who is a bit of an athlete and a bit of a mechanic, so it made sense to add the crafting with him. The fact that Nick is a mechanic, it makes sense that he can craft anywhere, and he can craft vehicles. The first time I ever crafted a vehicle, I couldn't believe it, because I hadn't actually seen anything about this on anything. You can take 2 bikes and make a junk bike, 2 cars and make a junk car. You can take a bike and a car and make, I think that one might just be classed as a mini bike or something. It's just insane, the level of crafting. There's one of the best ones is a steamroller and a motorbike, because you make a motorbike with a steamroller front and loads of spikes and jets of flame, because almost every vehicle has multiple abilities when it's a special one. You can hit one button to fire something, you can hit another button to do something. The junk ones are a bit insane, because when you hit the Y button they self-destruct, and when you don't know that and you just hit the Y button thinking, I wonder what this does, ah shit, I've just blew myself up, that's what it does. It's adds to the fun of it, I suppose. But there's just so many things to do. I never got bored travelling around the city killing things. They finally added the fact that your kills carry over from game to game, something we've wanted for years because of the zombie genocide achievement, and then this time they haven't even done a zombie genocide achievement. There's one for killing 100,000 and odd zombies, but compared to Dead Rising 2, which genocide 2 even harder, I'm pretty sure was something like 2.5 to 5 million. I got to the point where I'd been playing the game for 5 days of game time, and I got so bored it's unbelievable. Whereas on this, the kills carry over. I'll most likely beat the game 7 or 8 times anyway, so I'm going to get that achievement. I don't need to worry about it. Great, that's a stress off my mind. There's no longer a case of feeling like a relentless slog. There's costumes all over the place, just like before, and they'll add to your locker, just like in Dead Rising 2. And the DLC ones have a little bit of abilities, but I honestly didn't even find myself playing as them, mainly because, again, I couldn't find anywhere to particularly go through my costumes without going to those survivor zones, and I didn't find the time to go there because I was too busy going around mission to mission. And that's one of the things that they've done for the better. Obviously not counting nightmare mode because you get severely reduced time, but there's no standing around waiting for the majority of the time. It's one of those things. There'll be the obvious mission, like I've got one here, which is why I've just been driving around killing things. Explore while Rhonda's busy. You get the odd one of them, but the rest of them, it's a case of, as soon as that yellow mission, which is the story one, as soon as you beat it, another one appears, and you can go do it straight away, and you can keep doing them straight away. And it gets to the point that instead of waiting around, I was going from mission to mission to mission, and it was absolutely amazing because there was no downtime. There was no well, it looks like I'm waiting for an hour, because I mean there were times in Dead Rising 1 and 2 where I literally had nothing to do near the end of the game. There weren't any missions or anything, so I would just go to the safe zone and stand, and I'd put the watch on, and then I'd watch like a 20-30 minute show on the TV and come back and finally be able to play the game. And I absolutely hated that. They've got rid of that. They've improved everything about the game. Honestly, it's the game that Dead Rising 2 should have been. They've finally made what is pretty much a perfect Dead Rising experience. The only problems, as I say, I've got are the DLCs, which they're really short and they're uninspired, and it's just a bit of a shame that when the main game's been so good, the DLCs have been pretty poor. And then it's the fact that the cost, I mean, I believe it cost me something like £20 for the season pass, but at the same time the game only cost me £30 because I'd waited, so I'm not exactly complaining about the fact that I've paid £50 for a game that I've already had a significant amount of game time in, and I'm going to have a significant more amount of game time in. And it's the sort of thing that even then the DLC campaign, all 4 episodes, is still probably longer than your average COD game, you know, and they charge like £55–60 for them. There's obviously, ever since Dead Rising 1, there's been the ability to get missions by answering a phone or a walkie-talkie or something like that. Now, there's actually the ability to use an iPad or an iPhone or an Android or anything to actually do this sort of thing. You connect it via the Smartglass app, and it actually gives you exclusive missions as well. And I'll be honest, I was enjoying it for a moment, and then it got to the point that I realised just how badly it was destroying my battery life. And that's the only problem I've got with it. By making exclusive missions, it's the sort of thing that if you've got a device that you don't even care about anymore, put the app on that and keep it on permanent charge. But the amount of time I was playing the game and I looked over and I noticed, hang on a second, that hasn't switched off once. And when I checked my battery, it was just like, oh Jesus, I've just lost 30% battery having a couple hour session on a game. And it got the point that I didn't really care about the exclusive missions then. I cared more about the fact that it was probably putting a lot on me electric bill from the fact that I'd have had to have charged it around about 7 more times in the lifespan of the game than I had already done so. The story of the game, I've already mentioned obviously the story missions and that. The story of the game is great and awful at the same time. There are a lot of repeated incidents. You find yourself more than once waking up with no weapons in a room because you've been knocked out by the ZDC guards, and they're pretty much the big evil corporation and that. You find yourself more than once having to go from A to B to A to B because all of a sudden you think you're on the plane and you're ready to escape, and then someone's decided to go for a walkabout, so you've got to go find them, and it felt like lazy padding at one point. But then the actual main story of it and the progression and the whole of the end, I think it could well be the best end they've done in Dead Rising. It's just one of those, I absolutely loved how they handled the end. I loved who the main characters were, and that at that point it was just, it's something that I really don't want to spoil for anyone, but if you are a massive Dead Rising fan and you're waiting to get this game, maybe you're waiting for a PS4 version, which I honestly do still think will happen. They'll probably just do exactly what they did with the likes of Mass Effect and Ninja Gaiden 2, which were also exclusives for the Xbox and published by Microsoft and then magically came out on other systems. I really do reckon, if not at E3, if not at GDC, if not at PAX this year, at some point they will release Dead Rising 3 on the PS4. I would be amazed if they don't, but simply because Capcom are a business. They're a business actually in financial trouble at the moment. Why wouldn't they try to make money to stay afloat, you know? Even though they've said there's not going to be a version of Street Fighter on the PS4 and that, of the new one coming out, I'd be amazed if they haven't actually already got one in the works and they're just trying to get as much money as they can from people who'll buy the PS3 version and then people who'll upgrade to the PS4 version. Which, hell, if it has just a little upgrade cost like some of the games, then I wouldn't mind that at all. If you have been waiting though to get the game, then I think it's going to be the sort of thing that you'll be pleasantly surprised when you get it, because I really can't see any problems with it for the majority. It's the sort of thing that the little problems there are aren't even that noteworthy or anything. It's like the odd, I mean, I drove past and there were weapons hanging in midair because a crate had been destroyed and they hadn't dropped. That's a little glitch I don't really care about. Every now and then, if you're driving super fast, then a wall will pop up at one of the barricades. So because of the nature of the game, you might get to the point where you think, hey, I must have removed the barricade. All of a sudden you go flying through the windshield of your car. What the hell happened there? Ah, the barricade just hadn't shown up. And it's just one of those things, you know, it doesn't particularly bother me when it's things like that, because the rest of the game works so fluidly and so amazingly well. It's just, as I said, pretty much everything I would have wanted from it. The combo weapons, some of them return, like this, the electric rake. However, it's completely different. Before, you could just do a little attack with it and it was terrible. Now, it's a gun and you can actually fire out plasma with it. And this, as far as I'm concerned, was one of the worst weapons on Dead Rising 2, and now it's one of the best on Dead Rising 3. I found myself using it to kill bosses and that. There's things like the lightsaber, or sorry, the laser sword for legal reasons. The laser sword, I think, has been nerfed, but maybe that's simply because they wanted you to explore and use the new weapons. There are things like jazz hands, which is just machine guns on your fingers, and they're absolutely awesome. There's some of my favourites were just like combining a shotgun with an assault rifle to get a ZAR. I think it's ZAR. Either way, it's a 3-letter gun, and it's just it fires like incendiary shells, and it's just amazing. It cuts through the majority of things. So whenever you're fighting specific psychos and that, whenever you're fighting ones that are either flying or far away, I found myself relying on that weapon. But I never really found myself relying on a weapon too long, because there's always something new around the corner that does really well and just does a great job. The food system and that is the same as before. You can get food that will make you sick because it's been spoiled. And it's just one of those. It's pretty much everything about the first two games has been touched up to make it an overall amazing game. I've finally, because I've obviously started the story again to do the review, finally got to the point where it's going to let me build vehicles now, so I could at least show off this, which is the first one you get, which is basically a turret rig, and it's got a machine gun and that, and then you can push and it'll flick blades out, and it's just, again, as I say, pretty much all the unique vehicles, the combo ones are really cool. There's special co-op vehicles which you can use, so one of you is in a turret and firing a specific weapon, and that's probably again why the DLC was a bit of a disappointment, the fact that you can't even do them co-op. You know, they removed the co-op ability. I just don't understand the mindset behind that, I really don't, because the co-op system on the game is so good this time round, especially when you start the game. It even gives you a choice of play styles so that it will automatically pair you up with someone, rather than a case of you have to go around and just play with your friends, because I'm pretty sure on Dead Rising 2 there was no play with strangers option, whereas on this you can choose. I want to take my time and explore everywhere. I want to be speedy and go from mission A to B as fast as possible. You can just go through the different settings and it's great. The psychos in this game are, as far as I'm concerned, the best psychos that have ever been in a Dead Rising game. They are absolutely genius. Some of them are just, they really are great. And it's one of those, some of them are probably offensive, but it's all tongue-in-cheek, and I think that's the way they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be one way over the top, you know. There is a sadomasochistic one who is clearly over the top for the wrong reasons, but again, it's been done intentional. Just be funny, I suppose, and be like Dead Rising, because this isn't a serious political game with an agenda that tries to change the world. It's a game where you can combine two of the most mundane things ever and get a weapon that will kill thousands of zombies. And it's things that, I mean, like Nerf ball guns that Nerf doesn't hurt anywhere, but combining it with the right sort of thing, you can get a toy gun that fires little Nerf arrows, and you combine it with a game console and you get electric paddle hands that fire off a shockwave. It's just insane, it really is. And it's why people like Dead Rising, because it is just trying to be a game solely for the purposes of being fun. And it's one of those things that if it wasn't for the fact that it's severely violent and gory, I'd say it's the sort of franchise that would fit better on something like a Wii U, you know, simply because Nintendo always says we make games that are fun, and as far as I'm concerned, Dead Rising is one of the most fun titles you can get out there. Graphically, as I say, I think it looks good. Musically, some of the music is brilliant, but it's not exactly, the music isn't playing all the time, so it's not as if I can let you listen to it now. And just the whole gameplay and everything plays great. It's amazing, and I've said it about 100 times, but being able to go around one big city without the loading is just fantastic, because it really allows you to just get stuck in. The upgrade system, the leveling up, it's now done where you get attribute points instead of it just randomizing a skill like on the last one. And there were times when if you hadn't received the speed boost, then you'd save just before you level up and you'd keep reloading so that you could get the speed boost. Now there's all sorts of things and you just spend the points where you want. So the combo categories, you can make it so that you can use any gun to make these combo weapons here, rather than the ZAR that I said. It's originally a shotgun and an assault rifle. Now I could actually get two handguns and make it. And it's things like that. It pretty much makes a system of where almost everything is craftable with something once you fully level up, and I can't wait to get my character to that point. That's the one good thing about the DLC, the fact that I bought it at the start of the game, so it will help me get to the maximum level, because the points in that carry over, whereas there's some people who got the max level, then bought the DLC, and they said, well, I don't even get PP for it, so it's been a complete waste for me. and it's just great, the upgrades that it does, and each one of them gives you something specific. So life, the first one gives you a life cube, the second one gives you a life cube, that one gives you a life cube and allows you to survive, your survivors to live longer. Then that one gives food duration and effect, that one gives partial life regeneration, that one gives survivor recovery. Ranged weapons, you get the ability to have extra ammo, then extra armor, then extra damage, then piercing bullets. The mechanic one allows you to craft faster. The agility one gives you different sprint abilities and things. It's just excellent how the upgrade system and the leveling up systems worked on this one. The books, anyone who's played them will know about the books. Well, now the books, you have them all the time once you find them, and you just permanently activate it. You can't activate all of them, so it doesn't like overpower you, but you can just choose the one that's right for you at this time. So because I still need to level up, of course I'm going to go for the PP one. There's then trials, which also give you more reason to play and more reason to use certain weapons. So for example, jazz hands, that's the thing I said about the machine guns on your pistols. Crafting it 50 times will get me 10,000 PP. Raindrops keep melting my head. Creating acid rain will get me 10,000 PP. There's ones for killing certain ways. There's one for killing certain people. There's just this, that and the other. It's seriously, they've went out their way to make it so that the people like myself who play this game round about 5 or 6 times in a row won't get as bored, and I might well even play it 10 times in a row this time round, because I might want to just do everything. And it's a sort of game that I can see me keeping for the lifespan of the Xbox so that I can fully complete it. The only reason I'd get rid of it would be if it comes out on the PS4 when I can finally play it with all my mates who've got PS4s, and even then I'd probably keep it so that I can have just like my own thing, you know, and keep it for one playing basically, and for getting the progression up, because I mightn't be bothered to do it twice in a row, you know, on 2 different systems. So yeah, I really can't think of anything else left to say about this game. If you like Dead Rising, if you like Dead Rising 2, if you like Dead Rising Off the Record, if you like Case Zero, and if you like Case West, if you don't have an Xbox One, again, it's probably not worth you paying so much for a console to get it. But it's the sort of thing, if you ever find yourself either with the money, maybe if they've dropped down or something, and you're thinking, will I get enough lifespan to justify buying a system? I honestly reckon even if this was the only game you bought, you probably would, because there is just so much to do, and it is so well made. But at the same time, as I say, it's always the case of buying a console for it. If, however, you've got an Xbox One and maybe you weren't keen on Dead Rising, maybe you didn't like a lot of the bugs it had, a lot of the loading, a lot of the this, that and the other, there is a demo available for this. I sincerely think that you should try it, because they have done so much with this, and you don't need to really know much. I mean, the story continues on in places, but again, it's not exactly a story that's going to win awards or anything. It's not something you really need to know. It fills you in on the important parts about it, and at the same time, if you're a fan, you'll get more out of it, but it's just one of those that if for whatever reason you weren't keen on one of the earlier Dead Rising games, this is definitely something you should look at. If you've maybe not got much to play on your Xbox One at the moment, if there's not much out for you, then pick this up, because it'll hopefully see you through to the likes of Destiny coming out. You know, it's just one of those games that does so much and so well that the complaints I have are minor, and the only real complaint I've got is Capcom's incessant need to both go mental over Mega Man and completely neglect him, because every Dead Rising game's got a special costume and therefore a special ability. Dead Rising 1 was Mega Man, Dead Rising 2 was Arthur from Girls and Ghosts, it was rather cool. Dead Rising 3 is Mega Man X. Dead Rising 2 Case, sorry, not Case, it was Off the Record, that one was called, was Proto Man. So out of the 4 times we've had a costume, 3 of them have been from the Mega Man franchise, and I just don't understand it. When Capcom have got such an expansive library of characters. There's probably 25 Street Fighter characters that at any one point could work in Dead Rising, you know. So, and that's just obviously one of their franchises. I just don't understand why they keep doing Mega Man. I mean, even if they did Mega Man and someone else, you know, so even if they just added a franchise every time, it's just one of those that's my only real complaint, because it almost reeks of laziness. It's almost as if they were going through the office going, well, we've already done Mega Man, we've done Proto Man, who should we do now? Mega Man X, he's slightly different. Yeah, let's do Mega Man X. You know, and it is a bit of a shame, because for a Dead Rising veteran, it would have been nice to see someone new already, because at least when they did Arthur, he was cool, but at the same time, all his ability was, he had double armour for the first half of your life, and then you went down to your boxer shorts just like he would in Girls and Ghosts. But even then, he didn't have a weapon. You had to go and find a lance that would fit with a costume, and it wasn't a special lance or anything, and that also annoyed me, because when you consider how many weapons he had, how many of them would have impacted well in Dead Rising, it almost does sometimes feel like the costumes are an afterthought, which when you're a Dead Rising fan, to us, they're not afterthoughts. It's just a shame that they are to the devs. So, yeah, that is probably my only real gripe, and I think I can end the vid now having slagged off one section of around about 150 positives, because I am just absolutely in love with this game. Everything about it, I can't stop wowing over it. It's the sort of thing that I have played it solid for about the last 6 or 7 days, and all I want to do as soon as I'm done with this vid is start my file up again and actually play it through properly. So I think that's what I'm going to do. So there we go then. That's been the review. I hope you found it helpful. I don't score the games because that's based purely on opinion, so instead I'll leave you to make your own mind up. So thanks for watching, and if you've got any questions about the game that I didn't answer in the vid, or that hasn't been answered in the comments, then feel free to ask and I'll help if I can. Also, if you did find it helpful, don't forget to check out my channel, because there's plenty more like this up there, and don't forget to subscribe, because there'll be plenty more to come as well. So until next time, this has been Demon212, signing off.